public. Oh, there's Cassie. All right, we should have everybody mixed, so meeting's yours to go ahead and get rolling.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Well, I don't know why I don't have a camera. I apologize. I call this special meeting to order. Could we get a roll call?
Barkley,
Here.
Bates,
Here?
Kimbrell,
Here.
Patterson,
Present.
Resterholz.
Here.
Okay, motion approved. Approval of agenda. I'd ask for a motion to amend the agenda to add action item 4B to approve hire of Chief Financial Officer David Kuritar. And could I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Roll call?
Aye.
Bates,
Aye.
Kimbrell,
Aye.
Patterson,
Aye.
Resterholz.
Aye.
Okay, motion is approved. Okay, we're on to discussion information.
Oh,
Review.
No, we need
the-
to approve
we
the
need to approve
agenda as
the-
amended.
I'm sorry.
We need the agenda approved.
Oh, motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second. Second.
All right, roll call.
Barkley,
Aye.
Bates,
Aye.
Kimbrell,
Aye.
Patterson,
Aye.
Resterholz.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now down to item 3, discussion information, review forensic audit proposal from E.D. Bailey, BDO USA, LLP, and Reuben Brown. Open this up for discussion. Has everyone had a chance to review these various proposals?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a pretty good price variation here. Aaron, you've been very involved in this. Have you got any feedback?
Yes, hold on one second.
While we're waiting for Aaron, one of the things I appreciated, and we can go through price differentiation and everything. I wrote it all down in my notes so I could have it in a spreadsheet. But one of the things I really appreciate that Fly, he was from BDO, but I think his message is good regardless of which company we wind up going with. He recommended that whoever, when we're going through this process, that we have an independent party who is outside of district management, staff, really kind of managing the project of the forensic audit to prevent any conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest. And I think that's something we should seriously consider, whichever company we wind up ultimately picking. I think that's something that will help keep things moving smoothly. Maybe it's bringing in a specific project manager to work on this, so if they don't have anything else on their plate or what it might be. But I do think we should have somebody, third party, who can help facilitate bringing that information to the forensic team, but who is not employed by the district long term.
To avoid a conflict of interest.
Well, I have a question.
Or
Maybe
perceived conflict of interest.
I didn't hear what somebody else said. I have a question that I'd like to ask in regard to Keegan's suggestion. Isn't the independent forensic auditor why aren't they the disinterested party other than they're going to provide the work? How would that contribute to it? Help me understand that, or help the public understand it as well.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that there is still a decent portion of this process that the district itself is responsible for helping carry out. So gathering the information, providing it to the forensic audit team, being in communication with them, setting up meetings, that kind of thing. And the suggestion here was to make sure that it was somebody outside of normal district employees, so that, you know, you couldn't claim, or, you know, this instance couldn't happen where someone's dragging their feet or making it more difficult to get the information to the forensic team in an effort to cover it up. So it would prevent that from happening and also prevent it from being a perceived issue.
Okay.
That's assuming
Wouldn't-
there's a cover up, right?
What was that?
That's assuming there's a cover up.
Well, that's why I also throw in the perceived part. But I'm not saying there is a cover up, but, you know, I think part of the reason we're going through this is to prove one way or the other, you know, prove that there isn't any issue, right? You know, for the people on the team who have been saying that there's nothing wrong with the way the money has been spent. It's, you know, maybe there was accounting clerical issues because of the turnover in staff. You know, the money went to the right places. There's no fraud. We're, you know, for that group, we're going through this to prove that there isn't. And so to make sure that whatever answers come out of this, nobody can say, yeah, but maybe that would be a good idea.
I mean, have any of you guys actually spoken about how much, like, if we even have the funding for this? Because I have, and we don't have the money for this at all. And, you know, that's a concern. And we're always talking about, like, we need to wait until our books are more balanced to spend money. And it's a lot of money on top of the superintendent search.
That's true.
I was just going to ask what the additional cost would be to it, and what would the additional cost be? And then also, can't the board have overseers on it? Maybe we could appoint 2 board members to oversee or just be the liaison with the auditing company that we choose. And if they have any concerns, they can immediately report it to the Board of Education. Would that provide the same oversight? Because the board would be an arm's length away from it.
I think that could work. To go back to Cassie's concern over whether we should do this at all, that's one of the reasons I voted no on the budget last week, was because this was not included in the budget, and it was something we had been discussing needing to do. Having had a conversation with Aaron, I think there is some wiggle room, maybe not as much as we would like, to be able to afford this, even though it wasn't specifically budgeted for. And Aaron can probably chime in there with the details on that one. But that was my understanding, that we have the funding. It was not in the budget, but that we do have the funding to cover this.
Well, that would have been a good thing to talk about.
Barkley and Russell Holt were not on the tour of our facilities, which we're looking at probably over 20 million in repairs, especially with a lot of the HVAC equipment. They could probably push back some of the carpeting, but we have a lot of issues with not having AC, not having proper heating, needing some of these upgrades.
Boiler issues are a
Boiler
big deal
issues.
at many of the schools. Summit, Merritt, the high school, and those are high dollar items, and you know, they're all 35 plus years old with a life expectancy of 25 years. So this is definitely a factor, these boilers.
But with also having to budget all that in as well, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a forensic audit. I worry more about this next audit and then having budgeting and doing it while we had our previous CFO, and some of the worry because that was a whole new team versus some of the people that was very they were already working and doing a lot of the financial and accounting prior to when they left. So this last year would be more of a concern as well.
That's funny, Kathy. Aaron said the same thing, that we shouldn't do, or, we should consider maybe not doing a financial audit for this year that we had so many red flags on, because this next year might be worse.
Yeah.
I would say that the issues that were raised in this last one and the outcry from the public kind of necessitates that we do this now. And if it turns out there are even more issues next year, well, maybe that's something we need to look at next year as well. But I don't think the right answer is to ignore the issues that came up in the prior year out of fear that there might be even more potential for fraud in the coming audit.
I think
Yeah,
we need to move forward with this audit.
Yeah.
Can I add a little color to this comment, please?
Yep.
So my concerns around the 25 and why I suggested waiting to see how the 25 audit came out rather than 24 was we just identified these issues back in, was it February or March when that report came out. We've done some mitigation work, not a lot. So what we're looking at is FY25 will have some of the same concerns from a process perspective as 24 did. And with the previous CFO and the way that things were handled, there may be even more. And so all that to say, we know that there were some concerns in 24 based off of the way that this audit was done. There was just opportunity there. We're going to see similar issues in 25. And so my thought is if we hit 25, we can see what issues there are continuing from 24 and anything that may have opened up under the previous CFO that we weren't aware of. And then we can kind of hit it all at once rather than going to 24, seeing that 25 came out, having similar issues and more, and saying, oh, that's a lot of red flags too. We need to do both. And so my thought is we'd be able to effectively have an audit of the same opportunities that were available in 24 from the 25 audit, if that makes sense.
It would also give us time to budget. So, I don't know if you guys all got that email, and I thought it was an interesting idea about updating on our website, perhaps showing a progress to our actions, what the barriers are, how we're changing some of the systems in place that Courtney's put in, as well as the new CFO to
Yes,
tackle.
that's a good idea. A progress report on the current issues.
When did you send that email? I didn't see that.
That was sent to all of us June 16th, and then it was sent to us March 17th, and then resent to all of us June 16th. Not to the administration, but talking about with the volume of issues found in the audit, maybe having a progress report almost to resolve them, to report to the community, showing what has been done and what ownerships and what's been in place. So for instance,
someone else sent this email. It wasn't you.
No, not me.
Oh, okay.
It was a community member. And I thought that was an interesting idea as well, even in correlation of just sort of showing like what actions are being taken place while they are working on the new audit this summer, as well as going into the fall.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a transparency issue. is a good thing.
So
So
we
my-
talked about this internally with our admin team and with Lindsay, and it was something that we wanted to pursue, but coming kind of at the end of the year with everything, we didn't have time to pull it together, and Lindsay's out of the state, and so it's something that we were looking to address once she was back in July, now that things have settled down, but we just haven't had a time to build that out. She's our website person, and so it's on the list of things for us to look at. We just didn't have time to do it at the end of the year.
Yeah, I haven't
Right,
even
and
spoke to you
just
about
to
it,
go
so-
back to, I'm sorry, Cassie.
No,
Just
no,
to
no,
go
go
back
ahead.
to Aaron's
Okay.
point, on like so there was we already had an audit of the FY24, right? So we know where the potential issues are. So to wait to see if those potential issues are still issues in FY25, I don't think helps us, because we're not looking for where there's potential for issues. We're looking to double check those potentials that have already been identified in FY24 and dig in deeper and say, okay, was this just bad documentation, or was there fraud there? So waiting to see if there is still those gaps in FY25 doesn't help us eliminate the possibility that actual fraud happened in FY24. So that's why I don't want to wait. I understand some of those issues could still be rolling over because they hadn't been called out and they weren't addressed prior to the start of FY25. But I still think the actual issue we need to address is that just poor documentation, or was there fraud? And that's kind of what the purpose of this forensic audit is. That's what the people have been calling for. And that is what I think it is our duty to actually move forward with this, to make sure we can definitively say one way or the other, was there fraud or was it just bad documentation?
So let me, on my side, I hear what you're saying, Keegan. I understand where you're coming from. My thoughts on this are, if we're going to say that this is the level that needs to be investigated with the forensic audit, and so we go ahead and move forward with FY24, we already know we're going to assume we're going to meet that same threshold for FY25, because those issues, we did not have a chance to resolve a lot of those because of how late all of that information came out, which means we'd be looking at already committing to doing a forensic audit for FY25 as well. And so we're effectively looking to handle two of these because we've already matched up what the threshold is for conducting a forensic audit based off of auditor reports.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, if this forensic audit comes back and says, no, there wasn't any actual fraud, it was just misdocumentation, then I don't think that means we would necessarily need to do another forensic audit for FY25. If it were the same issues, if there are different red flags, then that's a conversation. But I still because even if those same issues are there in FY25 and we decide to forego a forensic audit for FY24, a clean forensic audit of FY25 does not guarantee that FY24 was fraud free. So there would still be that possibility hanging over us that, if we want to move past it, I think we need to actually examine FY24.
That's fine. I just want to be cognizant of, if that's what we're doing, that there is, from what I'm hearing, a high potential we'd be looking at doing a forensic audit at FY25 as well. And as tight as we are in trying to come up with the funds to make this happen here, which we can do once, we won't be able to do twice unless you start pulling from the reserve funds, which, if that's what the board intends to do or wants to do to make this audit process, accommodate all of the forensic audit processes. And I'm saying that plural because whether it's one forensic audit or two, but then if we start adding the project manager, like you said, we don't have it in the budget to be able to manage a project manager. I'm guessing that's going to be around the $12,000 mark, $12,000 to $15,000 to manage this for a few months. Because it's going to be a months long process. This isn't like a weeks long process.
Right. I
And
think
so
Eddie Bailey, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so when we're talking about, I think 35,000 was the minimum coming in from the forensic audit proposals we had. then we're adding in an extra 12 to 15,000 to have this project manager as an independent person. Like we proposed a budget last week that had $70,000 into the black. You allocated 15,000 of that 70 already to hire Grunmeyer for the superintendent search. And so now with this 35,000, that's 50. If we do another 12 to 15 for the project manager, we're talking 65 of that $70,000 that's already been allocated. And we haven't even gotten into the fiscal year at this point. And so when we're starting to talk, any additional overages in the audit process, which we're not expecting like last year, we think we're planning to have everything on, set up and ready to go, that we'll get through the audit process cleanly. If things happen and we have to come up with another, like we're already looking at having a drawdown on reserve funds, like just based off of what we're looking at doing with the superintendent search, the forensic audit processes around that. And we've effectively eaten up all of the overage that we had already allocated in that budget. And so I just want to put that out there that.
And Aaron, that doesn't even include what might happen or break or any of the other repairs. I don't think $250,000 is going to be enough in our Fund 43 after doing the tour.
Aaron, when would this second, if we did your proposal, when would the forensic audit begin with what you're proposing?
So we'd have to talk to the different firms because I don't know how quickly they can get us in. With current staffing levels that we're at, with the end of year that we're working on, the annual audit, et cetera, that's happening currently, we would propose not starting this until probably October would be our preferred timeline.
So you're only talking about July, August, September, starting it in October. So starting the forensic audit in 3.5 months.
That would be our preferred timeline, just based off of the current staffing situation, the strain that our staff's under, with everything we have going on at this moment.
Yeah, I'm not.
Well, it's
saying
only
not-
3.5 months. We would still, people want to have a forensic audit. I think everyone on the board wants to have a forensic audit. What significance does it make waiting 3.5 months on this? And I'm just curious what Keegan says.
Well, it's workload.
Hey, Aaron, so when do you think our audit for this upcoming year will be done by the October time?
No, I think we're going to be closer to December before the 25 audit's done and we actually have that ready to go. So if you look at the 25 audit, it would push it into next calendar year.
Oh, I thought you said October.
October would be if we just move forward with FY24 audit right now. That would be if we're doing the FY25, it would push it out, like I said, probably until January or so.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here again for a minute.
No, don't advocate for him.
and just say, for lack of a better term there, David, if this board decides not to move forward with a forensic audit for FY24, what I see as people's response to that is, oh, they definitely have something to hide. Aaron and the other board members whose positions are up don't want this information coming out prior to the election. And so they're pushing it off until elections happen. And I think it will just feed the fire of the disgruntled in the community.
It's
I
not
I think you're
political
right.
thing.
Yeah,
That
that's
might be
a pretty
the
good
case, but it's not
observation.
which I think, everyone would know that, but I don't think it's a political thing. I think it's really a strain on the district, the work power, and even voting. You're looking at 6 months. So if you're like, okay, let's vote, let's sign them, let's make sure that we have the money for, let's say, starting in January, we're still moving forward with it.
Yeah, but the information wouldn't be out until after the election. So that would be the problem. The timelines that the firms, the auditing firms gave us. So Eddie Bailey said the whole process would take 120 to 150 days. Reuben Brown said 6 weeks. I think BDO is the longest. They said 5 months. Or Eddie Bailey might be, but so there's varying degrees of length. Obviously, there is a
Well, 5 months would be closer to the election, and if not after, if they got it done. So either way, I don't think we need to be basing our decision on that, but really looking at the financials. I don't know if you guys received the packet. I think you guys both need to go on the tour with Jason to really see some of the work that needs to be done and for our teachers, because we need to not only budget some of those repairs as well as this forensic audit.
Yeah, so that's where I get frustrated with our budget too, right? Like, if we know already we have these repairs that need to be done, why didn't we budget for that in the budget this board just approved?
These repairs have been a decade to 15 years pushed down the road, so it's not just this board. And my question to Aaron
we knew about it and we budgeted for it. Why? I wasn't on the board before.
What?
Well,
You need to get the packet, Keegan, and we need $14 million in repairs that should have been done over the last 20 years, which haven't been done, which were laid in our lap. But my question to you, Aaron, is when or what is our current finance department doing to work with the auditors and the Department of Education or wherever this is coming from to work on the deficiencies to clear this up?
Are you talking about from a facilities perspective?
Yes, from our audit, we got deficiencies, and wasn't Courtney working? I mean, the deficiencies are outlined. Is that correct?
Yeah, the deficiencies are outlined, and most of those are process and policy related as far as how things get implemented. We've already put in, if you remember, we talked a couple months ago that we reorganized the way that the business department was kind of structured. And so a lot of that put in better segregation of duties so that we have different people involved in different parts of the process so that you're getting 2 and 3 sets of eyes on everything instead of just having one person being able to make a transaction and book it and record it and deposit money, et cetera. And so those are the types of things that are in there. There's still some policy work that we have to get done that we just haven't had time with the budget season going through, that we'll be moving into that shortly, trying to capitalize on having both David and Courtney in-house for the next couple months while Courtney's still working with us, so that we can have Courtney doing some of the audit work, and then David can do some of the audit work, but also some of the policy work. But those are the things that are being addressed. Going back to the budget and the facility side that Keegan brought up, the reality is we trimmed a lot of positions to get this budget to $70,000. We took money away from capital to make an even budget with our current financial situation. Losing the sales tax dollars was a huge blow to our budget, and trying to make sure that we still had a balanced budget moving into this year, we had to cut it from somewhere. And so it got cut from capital because we have to have teachers in the buildings. We have to have administrators in the buildings. There's things that we are obligated to have. We have to have transportation. Well, we don't have to have transportation. If you guys wanted to cut busing, we could do that. But those are the things that we'd be looking at trying to take away to add additional dollars to the capital to address some of these issues. The other option we have is to pull from our reserve funds and just allocate, $1 million or whatever it is to go there. But, we're, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but, we're okay right now, but we can't just dip into there often to handle some of these repairs. One of these, some of these one-time repairs we could do, but we have to be really careful that we don't get in the habit of pulling from our reserves to handle capital projects. We have to, just like at a house, you have to kind of save up and make the purchases when they come. And it's going to take us a long time with our current budget situations. We've got to look at other
Well-
ways of trying to be able to fund this. One of those.
Last year, we.
Hold on, Mick, if you can, 1 second. There's a couple grants like the BEST grant out there, which we've talked about before. It's a match grant. And so even if we could utilize that to fix some of the issues, we still have to have 40 to 50% minimum for us to be able to do that. And so as nice as it is to say, we need to make sure that these dollars are in the budget so we can fix things. This is a zero sum type of thing. If every dollar that we allocate, we have to create from somewhere. And so at what point do we start cutting additional positions, teachers, administrators? Do we cut transportation, et cetera, to handle those? Those are the types of decisions we're going to have to get to, but we're at a close to bare minimum as far as like teaching staff at each of our buildings to be able to make this budget work the way that it is right now.
Right, and in reference to the election, we don't have the control. My objective is for the teachers and the students in the buildings. We've got like $30 million in back repairs that are urgent to do. $14 million at the high school.
Right, but we didn't budget for that, and part of the reason we lost the sales tax is because the community lost trust that our spending wasn't full of fraud. So to say we didn't do a forensic audit because we can't afford to make these repairs that we didn't budget for because we lost the money, because people don't trust that we are spending the money properly, it's just a cycle. It won't get better until we can prove we are spending the money responsibly.
We lost the sales tax because the city council acted on their own. The people voted to keep the sales tax, and if it would have went back on the ballot, they would have passed it again. So it's totally.
I don't know if that's true, but
on the
there was
city
definitely
council.
a lot of calls from the public
And
to hold the funding because they didn't
3.2
believe we were spending it responsibly. The same
3.
people who are calling for a forensic audit now. So for us to turn around and say we're not going to do it, I mean, how are you going to go talk to the people of this town? How do you do that?
$3.2 million is not even a drop in the bucket to the repairs that was laid on this board.
Right. So to spend $35,000 to prove to the community that we are trustworthy seems worth it, because $35,000 is going to cover all the costs of repairs anyway.
The $35,000 needs to stay with the students. I vote no. You got my vote right now.
Well, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. I mean, it's catch-22. But everyone keep in mind that 2 years ago, we pulled almost $3 million out of reserves to do some much needed maintenance work. And we got grief for that. And there was some monies left over that we rolled over into the next year, and it was well documented. Yet we can't get past this fraud comment, this fraud accusation, and that is well documented how those reserves were spent towards maintenance. So it's a catch-22, guys.
And I just want to be clear, I'm not recommending not moving forward with the audit. I just said it might be wise to wait until the 25 audit comes in and see which year to audit. That's all I was trying to say, is buy us a little time for our staff to get through and then evaluate which audit year makes the most sense to do the forensic audit. I'm not trying to, keep from having this done.
Well,
It's just, I want to be careful about how we move forward with it is really my.
Right, I agree. And I agree, but now is not the time. Our finance department is new, and I think it'd be overtaxing for the district right now. And then we could potentially put ourselves in the same situation that we were subjected to before, but for different reasons.
I mean, I'm open as well, Aaron, just pushing it back and having this next audit, especially with the previous CFO and just how poorly I heard some of the stuff from Chris Banta, who did the audit. And so I would be open to even choosing, I think BDO was my favorite, if that was the first one on my list. Yeah. For pushing and trying to contact them to see if we can get on the schedule for sometime in January.
Remind me again, what was the action item? Is it to vote on which one we're going with, or to vote if we're going forward with it at all?
It can go either way. The agenda says, ask for a motion to postpone the decision if a decision has not been made, or the other one is to go ahead and engage with someone. So we have both. We have flexibility here in this agenda.
Well, if we're talking about the which firm, which is what I prepared for here, I thought Eddie Bailey was a good middle ground. The timeline was about the same as Reuben Brown, but their cost was about half.
Yes.
And then the BDO, I liked what they did, but they had a 2-phase approach. The quote they gave us was only for phase 1. And phase 1 seemed like it was basically our annual audit already, looking for flags. And then phase 2 would be digging in deeper if necessary, which I think Cassie, you had brought up at one of the previous meetings as well. So for them, I felt like we didn't have a quote for what we actually needed.
So if I can jump in on that part of it, I'm going to agree with Keegan on this as far as the firms and how this goes. The BDO they had that pricing for phase 1 to evaluate what needed to be evaluated, and then they'd quote us for phase 2.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of my
Yeah, I don't
concern
like
with
that.
moving forward with them, is that I don't know how, like, we can budget for their phase 1, but we have no idea what phase 2 is going to cost. And that gives me a lot of anxiety and goosebumps as we're starting to talk about this.
Yeah.
And on the flip side with ID Bailey, we sent them our full audit for FY24 to basically conduct what BDO does for phase 1. And they did that for free, and then came back and said, based off of this is our recommendation. This is what it's going to cost. And so that 35 that they were proposing is a informed quote based off of how our audit had already gone.
Yeah.
And so based off of that, I like the idea of ID Bailey just because they've been really easy to work with. They've already looked at our audit to know what needs to, where those gaps and the crevices are that they need to be searching for. And it's a fairly informed quote that we have a really good idea it's going to be close to that. BDO so open-ended, it makes me really nervous.
Yeah, you're right.
I agree
I
that-
had that backwards on my notes. I
Holding
don't want
that
to do the
phase
phase
2 over our head, there'll be a phase 2.
Absolutely. And that could lead into the 62, probably on the high end,
Right.
where the other firm, I did not like the last firm we talked about, but the ID Bailey, they were the ones that were not to exceed the fee of $35,000. So I always pulled up my notes and had that backwards. And then any of the out-of-pocket fees, they were already listed above as all-inclusive of any estimated. So I thought that would be more in our range as well.
Were they the ones was it Holstings that recommended them as well?
Say that again, Keegan.
Holding did not recommend them. What they did is they said, we have had clients who have used this firm with positive results, but they were about the only person they had on their list, but this did come from Holding.
Okay.
So our decision is, do we postpone it? Because we need to have, as Aaron stated, some reserve for any kind of emergencies, and really on anything under like $1 million is not a lot of reserve, and we don't even have 100,000. So that's
we
what
still
we
have
have in front of us.
Yeah.
Aaron, would it be impossible to go ahead and start talking to them, seeing if we can get on their calendar for a later date in January, giving our financial team time, as well as working on the budget to cut so we're not overspending during this upcoming year, and seeing if we can, when they do the when you have to do the second approval of the budget, this would be more in line with it, as well as going ahead and trying to get an agreement with them. I don't know if they would ask for money up front, half of it, if they would wait until January, or what that would entail. Could you give me a little insight on that?
I don't have answers to those questions, but we can, if that's the direction the board wants to go, and I'm happy to open those conversations with them. I can, if you want some more information from them before voting on this, I can reach out to them and start having some of those conversations about what the timeline would look like and what their billing process would be. One of the thoughts that I had was, hey, we're still in fiscal year 25. Why can't we bill it here? But we have to have like services rendered. We have to receive the goods that we order in order to count it this way. Was my understanding from the finance team, which is part of the end of year closeout stuff. So we might be able to put a chunk of it down here, but as far as being able to put the whole thing, I think there's some concerns there. So I just wanted to make sure that was stated before we moved on. But if that's the direction the board's wanting to go with ID Bailey, that's great. So we can start talking to them, or if you want more information, I can get more. Candace has your questions written down as far as the types of things that you're looking at. And if there's other questions the board has, we can reach out to them and see.
You know,
Could
Keegan,
you go ahead, Mick. Sorry.
Keegan, you made a good point. You know, this could easily become political of, well, they're just putting this off till after the election. But the other side of that is we're trying to be fiscally responsible, whether people believe it or not. And, you know, for us to wait for such a time that it's more economical and makes more sense and takes some of the heavy load off our finance department, there's something to be said for that too. We've got so many people that distrust us no matter what we do, but we've still got to be fiscally responsible, folks.
Yeah, it just seems like putting your foot down, being fiscally responsible with accountability of whether you were being fiscally responsible before seems like an odd place.
Does it make a difference, though, to anyone if we actually schedule it, we contract to do it, so that we're already committed to having it done? Would that make a difference to people? Because I think that everyone on this board agrees we need to do it. We must do it, and it needs to be done soon. But the public, there's going to be people who oppose us and who will say we're avoiding things, just like what you said, Keegan. So my question is, I'll just repeat it. Would it make a difference if we already contract to do it, so everybody knows that, yes, this is going to start by this date, and it's going to include outside in more of the scope than what we're originally going to be looking at?
Well, that shows good intent. You're absolutely right. It shows we're not kicking a can down the road. We're waiting for the opportunity for this to make the most sense and get the most bang for our buck.
So can we then proceed today, maybe with 2 votes, one to pick a firm that we intend to move forward with, and then the second one could be whether we move forward with it now or what next steps look like?
Yeah.
I would want to hear a little bit more than just that, though, Keegan. I would like to hear from the board a contractual commitment that we are moving forward with the firm that we pick, and that we move forward by, we're going to start this forensic audit by this date. So the public knows it's committed and we're obligated to move forward with it.
Well,
I don't disagree, Ruster Holt.
Yep.
I think we all sort of agree on what firm. I think it just sort of is obvious from everyone's comments, but at the same time, I would just try to get that contract to be set up in the date in January.
well, I think that's a good option, you guys. If we set some firm things in place now, select a group and leave the start date a little bit liquid that we could explain, what are all your thoughts? Would that be a nice alternative to starting it now? I mean, if we select a firm, we're showing our intent, and then we're allowing for the time to make the timing on this correct.
Well, I see a lot of good discussion on why we should postpone it to include next year or 25. And my gut feeling is to get it done now. But if we have more than if we pick a firm, I don't think that's good enough. I want to pick a firm and make a commitment that's not going to be able to change for a future audit in January, whatever that has to be. The sooner the better.
So here, I make a motion that we move forward with Eddie Bailey as our forensic auditing firm.
Is there a
Are we
second?
allowed to make two motions
Second.
on the action?
I'm sorry, Cassie.
Are we allowed to make two actions?
Only one at a time.
We've got some flexibility here. The
what did
way
Aaron
Kevin
say?
just laid it out.
Aaron didn't say anything.
Oh.
You can always add to the agenda. You can effectively bifurcate decisions into multiple parts. So based off the discussion, I don't see, not an
I
expert
mean, the
here, but
original
makes sense.
action item just said approve engagement with forensic audit firm. So even if we pick, so I have a motion on the table, by the way, but
And a second.
okay,
And there's a second, so there's discussion.
okay. So even if we select them, and we would still need to talk to them to see even when we could get on their calendar. So
True.
I don't know that we as a board can really say we want it to start at this date. We could say we want it to move forward as soon as possible, or we can say we'll contact them, let them know our intent to engage, get the contracts moving forward, and then we can figure out once we see what their timeline looks like when it makes the most sense for us.
That's a good idea, Keegan. The first item here was improve engagement with, insert the name, and then we could vote on the group, and then we could, then we need to engage with them. Once we select a firm, then obviously some time's needed to coordinate this.
Right.
Similarly to what we're going to do with a superintendent search. So I do like that. Keegan has a motion on the floor. David has seconded. Any further discussion?
No, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Does everyone understand?
Yes, this is to engage Eddie Bailey as the auditing company.
Yes. With no firm commitment to time frame, it would just take us to the next level.
Yeah.
Yes,
All
it's
right.
Eddie Bailey.
Everyone ready for a roll call? Roll call, Candace.
Barkley,
Aye.
Bates,
Aye.
Kimbrell,
Aye.
Patterson. Rester,
Sorry.
thank you. Resterholz,
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. And
then I guess next step is to engage with them and see what their timeline would look like.
yes,
Since they gave us their timeline a couple of months ago, to make sure that still is accurate and when they can get us.
And make sure that their timeline is in alignment with our timeline to do this as efficiently as we can. I mean, it's our responsibility.
You know, it wouldn't hurt to ask them their opinion about starting
No.
it in January.
No?
Yeah, I mean, that might even be another vote that we'll have to make as a board to, after we see the contract. But I think having the admin team go ahead and having these discussions to see when and see, you know, like Rusterhold said, asking them what's more efficient, especially knowing that some of this might roll over and to have an audit from the previous CFO and the financial team.
And then, do we want to discuss any further, I suppose the action item's over, but a committee or team that will be engaging with them to prevent any real or perceived conflicts of interest in the communication with the audit firm? Or do we want to just have it like, Aaron, maybe you can CC us on the communication you have with them so we can see that in real time or something to that effect?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways that we can handle this. One of the firms also asked about going through, actually, I think a couple of them talked about going through an attorney rather than directly with the district or with the board. So what I'll do is I'll include that kind of best practices in the conversation with them when we talk through the engagement. And then I can come back to the board with sort of what their recommendations are, and
Good.
we can move forward.
Okay.
I like that. Okay, so we've made a motion, it's been approved to name the audit firm. And so now we don't need a motion to postpone the decision. The decision will have been made. It's going to be a matter of now of timing and coordination to move ahead. Correct?
Yeah, and I think that will probably be another board decision as well, as soon as we get some of these answers from the proposed auditors. And I think we have another action item though, right?
We do. We do.
Okay.
All right. Is everyone good?
Yep.
All right. Well, then the next item is to approve the hire of the chief financial officer. I'm asking for a motion to approve the hire of Chief Financial Officer David Kuritar, and then a second. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I just clarify that we're voting on this because it was not included in last week's consent calendar?
Yes, and as we move forward, we were going to put it in August on the consent calendar, but we've run into a couple issues where some of the banks that he needs access to won't allow him without something from the board approving it. So we went ahead and slid it on for tonight.
It became more time sensitive. Yes, Keegan.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
All right. Well, then roll call, Candace.
Barkley,
Aye.
Bates,
Aye.
Kimbrell,
Aye.
Patterson,
Aye.
Rusterholz.
Aye.
Okay. There being no
Thank
further
you guys for
items, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
second? David, are you seconding?
He is.
Yeah.
I am seconding.
Okay. All right. Roll call, please.
Barkley,
Aye.
Bates,
Aye.
Kimbrell,
Aye.
Patterson.
Aye.
Motion carries. This
Well, I
meeting is
didn't get to
adjourned.
vote.
What about Rusterholz?
Yeah, right about Rusterholz.
You didn't vote?
Oh, forget about him. Yes, aye.
All right. Sorry, motion carries. All right. Meeting adjourned, and thank you all. That was some good, thoughtful conversation. And I do like the ideas. We did select a firm, and now some coordination will have to take place as to when this makes the most sense with the intention to move ahead.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
You
Take
all have a
care.
wonderful
Bye.
Thank you. Have a
Bye.
wonderful evening. Thank you, Candace, as always.